We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Hey guys. I'm back and I bring to you the part 4 of What If Naruto Gained Unwanted Immortality. The fourth Shinobi War has ended with the sealing of Kaguya and the Juubi in Naruto. As the years pass and his unwanted immortality becomes clear, what will Naruto do when everyone he once fought for returns to dust as the world about him changes? Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 25, There is Another. Are you serious? Why does this always happen? I swear, this Eragon is a trouble magnet just like Am. Oh no, the dragons haven't hatched for anyone for a century and the only one to hatch recently was for Eragon. Oh wait, another one just happened to hatch, except for Galbatorix. Naruto ranted inside his mind as he watched a shining red dragon with a black armored rider appeared from the fuming clouds as a familiar sapphire dragon with her rider, with a red sword flew up to meet it. Well Kit, it would seem all heroes are just trouble magnet in the end. After all, without trouble, how do you even become a hero? Anyways, will you continue to guard this Niswada, or will you go to Eragon? Kurama thought back. Eragon is no longer an inexperienced boy or as weak as he was back in Farthendur. Even if he is not able to defeat this new rider, he should not completely lose to him either. If he gets into trouble, I'll use the last of my chakra reserves to leave as my Kage Bunshins as I can with Niswada and then fly towards Eragon. However, I'm worried about the numerous negative auras that seem to be fused with this new rider. After getting over her initial shock, Arya ran the rest of the distance to stand next to Naruto as she parried and cut through another soldier. Naruto, are you alright? I'm fine Arya, but I'm worried for Eragon. With his pride as a rider, he might not use the Hiratian dagger he has to summon me. If I feel his chakra getting weaker, I will summon an army of clones to guard Niswada and immediately fly to Eragon. Naruto said back to Arya as he punched another man through his comrades. When Arya showed a questioning look, Naruto immediately replied. I won't interfere until the last moment. If I just kill this rider, Eragon will not grow into the man he should be, and will instead think to only rely on me. Besides, when he eventually fights Galbatorix, this kind of experience will be invaluable to him. Arya nodded as a large shadow loomed over them and Naruto's charge. As everyone in the area looked up, they spotted a sizable boulder flying towards them from one of the enemy's catapults. Are you kidding me? First it's arrows, now it's giant rocks. Naruto complained as thought of the best course of action to prevent the debris from hitting the Varden around him. As Arya wondered what to do without completely draining her energy, she saw Naruto's eyes start spinning in a hypnotic manner. She watched as when she heard Naruto whisper, Kamui. Instantly, a swirling darkness appeared on the approaching boulder as it seemed to swirl out of existence. Niswada shot a look at her blonde protector before nodding her thanks, knowing that any other way would have resulted in injuring her men with the resulting rock shards if he had just broken it apart with his hands. Come on Arya, don't be distracted. Keep your focus and ask questions later. Naruto said as he shot through several hand signs and muttered, Suetun, Suryuden no Jutsu. The surrounding men watched in fascination as a gigantic red water dragon, created from the surrounding blood, seemingly came to life with a roar and proceeded to tear through the men while leaving the Varden unharmed. While I'm able to just draw water from the air, I'm not nearly as good at it as Tobirama Senju and would only be able to shoot off a few of them when I limit myself to high Chunin reserves. But here, there's so much blood around here that there's no need to draw water from air when it's already on the ground. If I'm alone, I could just wind jutsus to annihilate my enemies, but in a battle like this and among my allies, I would just kill my allies as they get in the way. With water jutsus, at least I can control who I kill. Naruto thought and mentally filed the information away as he shot off a few more water dragons, quickly clearing the area when he suddenly saw what seemed like a shining red-blue meteor falling from the sky. Eyes widened, Naruto quickly looked for Arya, Niswada, and Murta before shooting off to them. When he found Niswada and Murta, Naruto stopped before them. Niswada, as Aji had promised me, I have guarded you long enough and now Eragon and Saphira needs my help. Before you protest, I'll use the last of my energy to provide you backup. Make sure not to hit them, as they'll dispel the moment they're impaled. Naruto said as he thought, Taiju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto, what are you talking? Niswada started before 3,000 clones of Naruto suddenly appeared on the battlefield. Protect Niswada and Murta even if it means your death. Naruto shouted towards his clones. The clones shouted back, yes boss. Except for a few of them that just muttered, but you're gonna dispel us anyways, so we're going to die anyways. These clones, Naruto just popped them out of existence before glaring at the rest of the clones as they immediately surrounded Niswada and Murta, not allowing a single Empire soldier or projectile to enter their circle. Just as Naruto jumped several feet off the ground to start flying, Arya charged out of a throng of men and jumped onto Naruto's front, wrapping her hands around his chest while doing the same with her legs around his waist. The pair dropped a foot before Naruto compensated for the extra load as he automatically wrapped his arms around the additional weight that was currently holding on to him, tightly. Shocked, he was about to protest when Arya simply glared at him, mad that he was about to fly off without her. With a helpless sigh, Naruto merely held her more tightly and flew as fast as Saphira towards the distant duo. Eragon stared at the opposite rider as they both dismounted from their dragons and onto a circular plateau. Saphira had teeth marks on her throat and her hind legs, but the red dragon far deeper wounds on his neck, ripped wings, and foot that was almost completely severed when he recklessly jumped off of Saphira to score a hit. You alright, Saphira? I'm alright, don't worry about me. His dragon is also completely out of energy, so just focus on that rider. Be careful though, something does not seem right. Saphira thought back just as the rider opposite them laid his hand on his dragon's ankle and muttered, Wei's Heil. The two watched in horror as the ankle knit itself completely back together. It wasn't the healing that startled them, but the fact that such a large wound was completed with so few words and did not seem to make him tired. After the process was finished, the red dragon moved its foot back and forth, clearly displaying a complete recovery. The only comfort Eragon had was that the mysterious rider was not Galbatorix, as his dragon was black and far larger than this red one as he strode to meet the rider in the center of the plateau. You sure you will not use the Hiraition kunai that Naruto gave you? You are beyond tired from the previous hours of fighting and the only reason you can stand right is because of the energy from the belt of Beloth the Wise and Zarok. But even that is running out. Saphira thought before the oncoming duel started. Eragon thought for a moment before answering. No, he is probably busy with guarding Niswada and besides, this is a matter between riders. As he communicated with Saphira, the rider in black charged forward with inhuman swiftness and attempted to land an overhead blow that would have cleaved Eragon in two from head to toe if Eragon did not manage to get Zarok up in time. As he did, he felt for the first time the true strength behind his opponent. The moment their blades made contact, Eragon clenched his teeth as he had to divert the force from the blow rather than block it head-on. Barzel, he's strong. His blows are just as strong as the elves if not stronger. Just who is this man? Eragon thought furiously as he blocked the flurry of blows coming his way while retreating towards one of the edges of the plateau. Unwilling to continue fighting at his opponent's pace, Eragon caught one of his foe's slashes with Zarok and parried it to the side while stepping in, giving him a clear path for a stab to the chest. Realizing this, the enemy rider hastily stepped back several steps, but lost his advantage in the fight as Eragon started a complex series of stabs and parries. While Eragon was able to push his opponent back into the center of the plateau and even to the other side, he was unable to land a single blow. Instead, the only evidence of the fight on the enemy rider were merely scratches on his dark armor as none of Eragon's strikes were powerful or direct enough to penetrate it. Eragon grew frantic as he felt the energy from his belt and sword begin to fade as even they were eventually drained. His opponent noticed this as he left his defensive stance and pushed Eragon back into the center of the plateau. As the fight wore on, Zarok became heavier and heavier in his hand as he started to notice the small imperfections of the sword in his grip, imperfections that seemed to prevent him from utilizing his full power. Eragon ignored this as sweat poured off his sides and partially blinded him and his shoulders burned. Eventually, Eragon made a mistake. He fell for a feint by his opponent as he went to protect his torso from being cleaved and instead was slashed across his left leg. Crying out, he fell as Zarok left his hands to impale itself into the rock below. Staring at the sword that grew larger in his vision as it approached, Eragon's only thought was, not like this. Not without seeing my opponent's face. Ignoring the pain of the deep cuts in his hands, Eragon gripped the blade of the sword in front of him, tight enough that his opponent was only able to slide it by an inch before completely stopping. As he did so, he brought the sword towards him and slammed his fist into the black-armored rider's helmet, ripping it off and finally seeing his face. An elf? How is this possible? How could an elf possibly join Galbatorix and give his loyalty to the man that hunted his kind? Eragon thought as he watched the elf paw at his face, noticing that his helmet was gone. Why? Why are you doing this for Galbatorix? How could you do this when Galbatorix tried to hunt your kind for all these years? Eragon yelled at the rider, wanting answers as well as trying to buy time to get a second wind of energy. As the elf refused to answer, Saphira suddenly flew back into the air and attempted to dive into the traitorous elf and mangle him with her claws, teeth, and wings. Risa! Commanded the unknown elf as he clutched the air. Saphira suddenly paused in mid-air with a yelp as she suddenly could not move even a muscle as she was held in the air, without rising or falling. Immediately Eragon attempted to break the spell and shouted out while holding out his hand, Braka du Vinyali sem Wilder Saphira an Eka. Seconds passed by as the elf merely looked at him impassively, as not even feeling Eragon's attempts at freedom. Involuntary tremors started to rack Eragon as his body temperature began to fall as the spell eventually started to drain his very life to keep itself maintained. Finally, after another 2 minutes, Eragon had to break off the spell in order to avoid falling unconscious and into the dark void of death. Now what? Will you kill me? Eragon asked, not really expecting an answer as he laid there, panting and pale. For the first time in the fight, the elf started to speak. No, Master Galbatorix wants you two alive, especially her. The elven rider said expressionlessly as he pointed to Saphira. The last egg contains a male and my own dragon is a male. With her, he will be able to create his own dragon rider order. Eragon paled even further at the very idea of his other soul's half being used as a potential breeding machine, only there to produce more dragons for the madman of a king. No, I cannot allow this to happen. Saphira, with all of our remaining energy, attack his mind and try to distract him long enough in order to flee. Now. Eragon and Saphira immediately poured the last of their energy into a mental battering ram, intent on breaking through the elf's mind and distracting him, or potentially killing him right there. Immediately, hundreds of voices seemed to fill their own minds as the presences behind them seemed to completely dissipate their mental attack without much effort. Annoyed at his opponent's futile struggles, the elf walked towards Eragon with a raised sword. Although Master Galbatorix did say to bring you unharmed, I do not think that he will mind you missing a hand. The elf said as he brought his sword down in a stab, intent on severing Eragon's hand that contained the silvery mark of a rider. Eragon could only watch helplessly and in rage as the sword seemed to move in slow motion. Soon enough, the sword stabbed down into flesh as a burst red blood filled his vision. Chapter 26, Eruption. Did he cut off my hand yet? Why is there no pain? Eragon thought behind closed eyes before noticing that he could still flex his hand. Immediately, more questions raced through his mind. If my hand is not cut off, why was there a spray of blood? Eragon thought as a second later his eyes widened before whipping up towards what should have been the elven rider. Instead, what he saw made him tremble with inexplicable rage as he saw a head of blonde hair hovering over him. Hey Eragon, glad to see you're alright. Seems like I'm still saving your ass from everything. Naruto chuckled as he coughed out another mouthful of blood as a sword point poked out where his lungs were. Naruto. Cried several voices as Eragon, Arya, and Saphira witnessed the horrifying sight of a sword completely impaling their blonde friend. When Arya turned her rage-filled eyes towards the owner of the sword, she stumbled backwards as she whispered, Phelan. No, how could this be? Is this the man that ruined Master Galbatorix's plans in Farthendur? Seems like he's nothing much after all, just another weak human. The now identified former closest friend of Arya smirked as he tried to pull his sword out of the blonde, only to be shocked when he found it seemed to be as if Shuriken was stepping on it. Guys, the next part might be a little frightening to you, and I really don't want you to be afraid of me. But I will do what I must to protect my precious ones. Arya, I'm sorry about this, but your friend Phelan really needs a serious beatdown to wake up. Now, look away. Naruto said as he gripped the sword point from moving as his eyes turned red with cat-like black slits with 9 swirling tomo on concentric circles. The friends looked on with awe and slight fear as they saw Naruto's wounds heal over the sword, smoking as it did. locking it in place as red bubbles started appearing over his body as a single tail and what looked like fox ears formed from those bubbles. One tail version 1 cloak, Naruto said as he turned around towards the now uneasy elven rider as his dragon came flying to reinforce him. So, when exactly were you planning on taking that toothpick of yours out of me? Naruto bloodily grinned, showing his enlarged canines, as he reached out backwards towards the elf. Humph, a mere human who's not even a rider trying to act tough. What a joke. Phelan grunted as he finally managed to pull his sword out from the blonde's body. However, after looking at his sword, he widened his eyes in astonishment as he saw that his once spotless sword was pockmarked with small holes along its length. A mere human, eh? He, in that case, let this mere human show you what he can do. A piece of advice, I have never gone into this mode ever since arriving, so try not to die, or else Arya will probably hate me. Naruto laughed as he blurred from sight. Finally Kit. Finally, you use my power on this continent. Now go, show our power to this weakling that dared to injure us. Kurama laughed as for the first time he got to see what exactly this new mode could do, even if it was only the one-tail version 1 cloak. Phelan first donned on his helmet again and looked around wildly, trying to track the blonde, but failing miserably at the task. Soon a whisper came from behind him. First let's get rid of that pesky armor, shall we? Naruto whispered before disappearing again and reappearing beneath the elf while unsealing arm wraps from the seals on his arms. The moment he did, he kicked up at the elf's chin. As the armored elf flew up, Naruto jumped up after him to continue punching him and his armor apart. Once Phelan reached a certain height, Naruto above him and punched him back down to the ground. However, before Phelan could slam into the ground, Naruto solidified the air enough to kick off and almost instantly reappear below Phelan again and punch him back up into the air. From there, he executed a series of angled punches as he pummeled Phelan as if he was a pinball. Finally, as Phelan headed back towards the ground with his near-shattered armor and heavily bruised internal organs, Naruto wrapped the arm wraps around the elf's midsection that pulled him back up before slamming a heavy palm that completely shattered wards and armor of the elven rider into pieces. You're a wrench, Naruto shouted as the now de-armored Phelan finally slammed into the ground, creating an elf-shaped crater that was several feet deep as bits of armor fell from the sky. Phelan unsteadily got up from the crater, trying to clear his eyes as he coughed out what appeared to be pints of blood and bits of internal organs when he suddenly saw the blonde dropping from the sky with his heel over his head. Before the blow could connect, the red dragon grabbed his rider away from the point of impact before flying into the sky, attempting to escape the now horrifying blonde. Tsutenkyaku. Everyone watched with wide eyes as an enormous crater opened up on the plateau at the point of impact. Then they felt the ground shudder when they realized that the plateau was about to collapse. Immediately, Eragon and Arya jumped onto Saphira and as she took off, the plateau shuddered for the last time before completely breaking apart. Phelan had cold sweats dropping down his forehead. It did not matter if he was an elf or dragon rider, he would have been blown to pieces if that kick had landed on him. Immediately, he sent a thought towards his dragon, fly away. As quickly and as far as you can from that monster. Ho, you think you can just fly away from me? I think not. Naruto yelled as his eyes started spinning. Bansho Tenin. Phelan immediately felt an irresistible pull coming from the blonde as he and his dragon were dragged from the sky to the blonde. Using the same spell while relying on his other sources of energy, Phelan shouted, Braka du Vinyali sem Wilder Saphira un Eka. All of his energy was almost completely evaporated in a mere instant as his spell attempted to resist Naruto's pull, but instantly failed. Once the dragon rider pair came within his range, Naruto dodged the dragon's claw and tail strikes as he cocked his fist back before yelling out his deceased pink teammate's signature move. Okasho. Naruto punched the dragon square in the chest and with screech of pain, the dragon and his rider shot down into the rubble of the destroyed plateau. As the dragon, now looking miserable with the blonde's fist imprint in its cracked chest scales, coughed out gallons of blood from its now severely damaged organs and attempted to still fly away, Naruto made a single snake hand seal as another bubbly red tail popped out and said, Mokutan, Mokuryu no Jutsu. Phelan and his dragon watched helplessly as gigantic wooden dragon with yellow glowing eyes erupted from the ground to completely wrap around the pair, preventing both of them from moving. Before he could be engulfed, Phelan attempted a fire spell and watched as an intense flame engulfed the wooden dragon. only to be horrified when all that was left was barely a burn mark as the flames died down. His dragon attempted to bite his way out, but whatever he bit only grew back instantly. Within seconds, the pair were cocooned within the dragon. Phelan for the last time tried to use spells to break through the dragon when suddenly, he realized that his energy was being drained so rapidly that the largest flames he could conjure was the size of his thumbnail. Now terrified, he looked at the blonde that floated over him with his arms crossed and an aura of power far more powerful than Galbatorix's. Now, what to do with you? Naruto mused out loud as he withdrew the Juubi's chakra. Maybe cut off an arm like you wanted to do to Eragon. I could always regrow the arm later, so might as well. Naruto said as he raised his Hiraishin kunai with an extended wind chakra blade running through it. Before he could bring it down, he felt a hand gently lay on top of his shoulder. Naruto, please, could you leave him to me? Arya asked, almost begging her friend. Arya, I was not going to actually take off his arm and of course you can take him. I know just how important he is to you after all. However, while it may not have been noticeable compared to me, the amount of strength he has is not natural and it's as if there's some external power sources that he's drawing on. So be careful, the amount of magic he's able to wield is far more than even Orome's. Naruto said while warning Arya of the potential danger. Arya nodded, shocked that her former friend, Phelan, was actually so powerful, yet was completely helpless against her closest friend. Arya, is that you? Get away from that monster. No human could possibly be that powerful. Please, help me. Were we not friends for decades? Phelan begged Arya, only now noticing her once the blonde was out of his sight. Phelan, is that really you? Just what happened to you? I thought you were dead. Arya asked. Arya, it really is me, the same Phelan that walked with you for decades, the same immortal among other mortals. That night, I was indeed shot through the chest, but not directly in the heart. The arrow was an inch to the right of my heart. Durza found out about this and had me brought directly to Galbatorix. Phelan said. Arya shook her head as she tried to find the reason behind his betrayal. If you were alive, then why did you agree to help Galbatorix? Don't you remember the deaths of the riders? What his forsworn did to Orome's? That our king, my father, was killed by him. If not for that, we are elves. Phelan. How could you bear to submit? Ha, agree. Phelan started with a hint of madness. You think I agreed to do this? You have no idea the amount of physical and mental pain that man put me through. After his torture, he extracted everything he could about the Varden, the elves, Oromes, and as much as he could about humans' dragon. And after my dragon hatched for me, he forced both of us to swear in the ancient language. But the knowledge, oh the amount of knowledge he knew about magic that we elves have forgotten. Spells so powerful, though we elves dare not utter them, cowards that we were. Words in the ancient language that were lost until Galbatorix discovered them. Ways to manipulate energy. Secrets, terrible secrets, that can destroy your enemies and fulfill all your desires. You betrayed the elves. You betrayed me. If you were completely regretful of what you had done, would have pitied you. But now, it is obvious that you have been seduced by his knowledge and his power. I should have made sure you were truly gone from this world before running from Durza and his Urgles. Arya said bitterly, hating each word that passed through her lips. To give some measure of comfort, Naruto placed a hand on her shoulder, providing the warmth she so desperately needed. When Arya placed a grateful hand on his, the madness and hatred in Phelan's eyes deepened as he glared at the blonde. Human, get away from Arya. You do not deserve to even be in her presence, let alone touch her so casually. Arya, get away from that monster. There's no way that a mere human without a dragon could possibly be so powerful. Not even Galbatorix is so powerful. Phelan ranted as Arya started glaring at her fellow elf. Silence, Phelan. You should have expected this when you betrayed us to serve Galbatorix. Even if you were forced to serve him in the ancient language, you could have found somebody to instead kill you rather remain a traitor to us. Arya snarled as tears started to rim her eyes. You are not the Phelan that I know. Naruto Vor, please. Arya started before Naruto laid a finger on her lips. Do not say anything more. Leave it to me. Eragon. Take Arya with you back to the Varden. Naruto said as Eragon nodded and went to help the distraught elf onto Saphira before flying back to the Varden's camp. After confirming that they left, Naruto started walking towards the bound duo. What are you going to do? No, stop, stay away from me. Phelan yelled as his dragon resumed its struggling as the blonde came closer. You attempted to not only capture one of my friends, but also forever cripple him. Not only that, but you deeply hurt my closest friend on this continent, so much that I fear she will never truly trust anyone but me. But don't worry, I won't prolong your suffering, but first some information. Naruto said as he outstretched his hand towards the elf. No, no. Phelan screamed as the blonde muttered, Ninjendo. As Naruto carefully read, rather than ripped, his soul, he found the reason why Phelan seemed to be so strong. Interesting. Unlike the Arazak, it's actually easier to read this guy's mind even with all of the ancient language oaths that I know Phelan swore to Galbatorix. Maybe it's because the elves actually have a chakra system and the Arazak didn't. For some reason, now that I think about it, the Arazak seem to be, made than grown. Going to have to find out more about that. Then Naruto came across the reason Phelan was so strong. So that's the reason why this elf is so much stronger than Eragon, even if he was weakened. It was because of the Eldenari that the two have enslaved. Disgusting. It's just like what Madara did to the Bijou. And this elf, he enjoyed the power he held over his own Eldenari. Whatever he may have been has already been completely twisted, even worse than how Nagato was. There's only a small chance of saving him. I'm sorry Arya, but I don't think I can save him. But I'll try to spare the dragon so that they don't go extinct. Taking his hand off of Phelan, Naruto turned to face the red dragon's eyes. Dragon, if you were given a choice, would you leave Phelan and forever swear your allegiance to Eragon when he recreates the Dragon Rider Order? The dragon stopped struggling for a moment, as if hesitating, before reaching with his mind to the blondes. Allowing the connection, Naruto waited to hear his answer. I am unnamed. When Phelan got me to hatch, instead of showing love, he instead showed me hatred and rage to the point of refusing to name me. After being forced to swear in the ancient language, he only used me as a tool. And yet, I kept believing in him, hoping one day that he would change his mind. But after being connected for so long, I know now that he will never change as he only wants the world to suffer as he did under Galbatorix. As long you spill the blood of the traitor, I swear to obey Eragon should he recreate the Dragon Rider's order. The dragon said in a deep baritone. Naruto contemplated for a moment before nodding at the dragon's words. So be it. I'm not sure if this will work, but this is the only way I can think of. Prepare yourself dragon, this may hurt. As the dragon tensed, Naruto slapped a hand on its head and shouted, Kyaku, Fuin. Chapter 27, Breaking Bonds. A glow surrounded the Dragon Rider pair as the dragon roared in pain as Phelan shuddered uncontrollably, unable to even let out a scream. Slowly, what seemed to resemble a complete chakra network started to float over the elf's head. Naruto looked in interest as the chakra network outline moved from Phelan to the dragon that was under his hand. He also noted how the silver glow that signified a dragon rider disappeared from his palm. Finally, the glow surrounding the two disappeared as Phelan fainted clean away as the dragon heavily panted. So, how does it feel now, any lingering pain? Also are those ancient language oaths you swore to Galbatorix still in effect? Naruto questioned, interested in the result. Not is my link broken with Phelan, the oaths that I was forced to swear to Galbatorix seem to also have been broken. Whatever you did, it seems to have the side effect of breaking all oaths in the ancient language. The dragon responded in an excited tone as he roared his joy at the freedom he now had. Naruto smiled, glad that at least he made the correct decision and that his gamble paid off. Kit, you do know that you could have killed them both if it failed. Like not just killed, but even their souls would have been shattered. Even your Rinnegan would not have been able to revive either of them if that happened. Kurama wryly said in his mind as Naruto paled a little. Immediately, he put a hand on the dragon's snout and said in a grateful voice, I'm just glad I didn't accidentally shatter your souls. As the dragon somehow sweat dropped. Now, as for those Eldenari, they seem to be sealed in a pocket dimension that floats a tiny dot in space behind him. But apparently, unlike my Kamui dimension, anything that touches this dot is cleanly severed. Kurama, any suggestions? I don't want to leave these Eldenari under his control, and they seem to have their own consciences from what I read in his memories. Well, try using your Kamui first. If that doesn't work, take this elf to Oromiz and Glader. They should know more about this kind of magic than we do. Kurama replied back. Nodding, Naruto paused before activating his Kamui at the tiny dot in space that he could barely see. Hesitating, he asked, Kurama, do you have anything resembling an Eldenari? A few moments passed by as Kurama searched within himself. I really do not know, Kit, and if I did, I would tell you. However, from what we know, these Eldenari are orbs within the dragons that can somehow house their conscience, as well as their chakra, which they know as magical power. From that, it would seem that these Eldenari can house their very souls. The only thing that closely resembles this is the fruit of the Shinju that Kaguya stole and ate to gain her godlike powers. Being the new Juubi, there is a chance that one day I too will develop a fruit or something like that. If that happens, I will let you know. He, a fox giving birth to a fruit. That's gotta be worse than having rabbit ears. Naruto laughed mentally as Kurama developed a giant tick mark and several giant veins that started pulsing on his forehead. Brat, I dare you to say that again. That's it, it's Bijudama time. Taiju Bijudama. Kurama roared in Naruto's mindscape as multiple giant Bijudamas rocketed around his mindscape, giving the blonde a killer headache and stars in his eyes. Kurama, stop it, I'm sorry. Naruto wailed out loud as the red dragon in front of him watched with wide eyes as he wondered what exactly was making the invincible blonde cry out in obvious pain. As Kurama grew tired of destroying the place he lived in, Naruto was finally able to bring up another point. Kurama, with the oaths in the ancient language to Galbatorix broken, shouldn't this also apply to Phelan? Even if I didn't directly place the seal on him, due to their previous connection, it should have affected him to some extent. We'll know when he wakes up, although that doesn't seem to be any time soon. Well, even if makes trouble, you can just tear him apart, although try not to do it in front of your future mate. Kurama chuckled as Naruto protested the last statement. Whatever, let's try the Kamui. Naruto retorted as his eyes began to spin. Kamui. Soon after the activation of his dojutsu's power, a swirling darkness that looked like a doorway opened where the Eldenari were. Inside was a large pile of luminescent orbs of varying sizes, shapes, and colors. But despite their beauty, Naruto staggered backwards as he felt a strong negative aura from them, despair, rage, madness, and hopelessness. That monster, how could he do this? Although they may no longer have their bodies, they still have their own minds. He actually mentally broke each one just so he could utilize the power within them. Naruto snarled as Kurama growled with rage, remembering what Obito and Madara did to him and his siblings. Kid, I don't care about hiding our powers anymore. Although this battle only increased your physical strength and chakra density by a small amount, don't hold back against this madman. Just take that bastard down, nobody deserves to live under that Madara wannabe. You got it, Kurama. Naruto thought grimly as he gathered the Eldenari into his Kamui space before turning to the dragon. Hey, could you fly us back to the Varden? Don't worry about Phelan waking up, I'll keep him unconscious. Naruto asked as he pointed towards the Varden. The dragon nodded his assent as the wooden dragon that was wrapped the two of them broke into pieces and sank into the ground. Kneeling down, he gave Naruto easy access to his back as the blonde tied Phelan up with some ninja wire from his seals, chucked him over his shoulder, and then jumped onto the dragon's back while channeling chakra into his feet to grip onto the slippery scales. Now go. To the Varden. Naruto commanded as the trio lifted off and flew towards the camp. Saphira shakily flew back to the Varden where Eragon and Arya saw the Empire's army retreating, a full half of it gone, mostly due to the blonde's clone army killing a full quarter of it before dispelling. When they landed, Arya immediately sprinted towards her tent to find comfort in the silence of her own space. Eragon sighed as he walked towards Ajihad's command tent. Along the way, he managed to basically understand the relationship between Phelan, the black-armored rider, and Arya. It was apparent that the two once had a very close relationship before Durza ambushed them and brought the dying Phelan to Galbatorix, where he proceeded to break and make Phelan and his dragon swear in the ancient language. As he entered the tent with Saphira waiting outside, Ajihad and the other commanders of the Varden immediately firing off questions. Who was the new rider? How powerful was he? What happened to him? Eragon merely went to sit on a chair as he told them that Naruto was going to come as soon he settled matters at the once plateau. Reluctantly, the people in the tent let go of their questions as they waited for the blonde to arrive. Soon, the people in the tent heard cries of alarm and fear as the characteristic sounds of dragon wings thumping the air reverberated throughout the camp. Saphira reared back on her legs, prepared to fight the red dragon when she saw something that made her widen her eyes. As Eragon and the others left the tent, they witnessed the blonde standing on top of the red dragon with an elf slung over his shoulder. Once the dragon landed, Naruto jumped off its back and handed the elf over to Eragon before saying to the rest those gathered, "Wait here for a moment. I'll go get Arya. She deserves to hear about what I'm about to say." In the next instant, Naruto shunshined over to where he knew Arya would be, her tent. Without waiting, Naruto pushed past the tent flap and entered to see Arya sitting on the opposite wall of the entrance. Seeing the tear trails, Naruto immediately went to Arya to sit next to her, trying to provide a friendly presence. What he did not expect was for Arya to turn towards him the moment he sat down and wrap her arms around him, using him as a stabilizer as she trembled with her suppressed feelings. After his initial shock, he merely smiled and gently wrapped an arm around her waist and held her close as her tears mixed with the blood on his battle attire. After a few moments, Arya unwrapped herself from the blonde, although still close enough for his arms stay around her. "I am sorry displaying such a shameful side of me, Naruto-vor," Arya said as she turned her face away. "It is not shameful to cry after finding out that your closest friend betrayed you and your very race to the worst person in Allegesia's history. Trust me, I would know," Naruto said as he laid a hand over his heart. "Arya, there is something I must tell you," Naruto said after waiting a moment. At his statement, Arya turned her head towards her friend, wondering what exactly he meant. "After you and Eragon left, I had decided to kill Phelan, but allow his dragon to live, provided he swear in the ancient language to follow Eragon after being freed. However, before doing so, I tried a seal on the dragon. This seal was designed in the elemental nations to cut the connection between a human and his summon." Arya's eyes widened at the possible applications against riders. "In short, it was successful. I managed to cut the connection between Phelan and his dragon, with both of them intact and sane, although it seemed that the chakra pathways that the dragon gave to Phelan transferred back to it." Before Arya could ask anything, Naruto raised a hand towards her. "But what came next completely stunned me. A side effect, at least for the dragon, was the severing of all oaths in the ancient language to Galbatorix. And this might have extended to Phelan. However, I was not able to find out as after the seal, he fainted clean away," Naruto said as Arya froze at the implications of what he was saying. "Are you saying that Phelan's oaths to Galbatorix have possibly been nullified? That he does not have to give his loyalty to him and that he could return to us? Naruto, you are not lying to me, just make me feel better, right?" Arya asked as she grew a little defensive at the end. Naruto sighed before saying in the ancient language, despite knowing that it held no hold over him, as found out much earlier when training with Arya. "I swear everything I have said is the truth." Arya relaxed. She knew that the ancient language held no domain over her friend, but the fact that he tried to at least showed his sincerity. Soon she thought back to the time when the two discovered this startling fact. Flashback. "One more time," Naruto called out as Arya attempted to bind the blonde with a spell. Arya nodded before saying, "Malfini." If the spell worked, her friend would not be able to move a muscle. However, like all the previous attempts, he just ignored her efforts and continued moving as if nothing happened. "So far, you have tried to break my bones a dozen times, bind me at least 20 times, and have attempted to set fire to me a couple of times. If I had not known who you were, I would have thought that you were into some kinky things," Naruto teased as Arya blushed a bright red, wondering how she had ever accepted this blonde as her closest friend. "Anyways, try to swear in the ancient language to never make fun of me for today," Arya said, trying to regain her composure as Naruto just looked at her in confusion. "Just do it." Naruto shrugged before swearing to do so in the ancient language. After a few moments, Naruto looked at Arya, who intensely staring at him, before cheekily saying, "Nah, Arya, if you keep staring at me, I'm going to blush. How are you going to take responsibility?" Arya stared at the blonde, not knowing what to say or do for a few seconds. Eventually she sighed as she accepted the fact that Naruto was just an enigma with too much power. "It would seem that the ancient language is unable to bind you at all, even with you saying the words. Do you have any ideas why that is so?" Arya asked. Naruto thought for a moment before saying the theory that was in his mind. "Perhaps it's because unlike the races in Allegesia, I have an extremely dense chakra that is constantly running throughout my entire body. Whenever you direct a spell at me using the ancient language, what would affect a regular body would not be able to do anything to mine. Essentially, my chakra is like an impenetrable ward that I just naturally have. As for the oaths in the ancient language, they are basically seals that attempt to bind the person that said them. But with my immense chakra reserves, the ancient language is simply unable to bind me at all, hence making any oaths in the ancient language useless. In fact, one day you too will be unaffected by the ancient language due to my training. Arya stared at the blonde with wide eyes, before saying with a smirk. So there appears to be a brain in that head of yours after all. Although you still fight like a barbarian. Naruto pouted as he just remarked, I only fight like a barbarian because there hasn't been anybody powerful enough to force me to use my own fighting styles. You're just jealous of me. Arya uncharacteristically pouted back, unable to form a response to the now widely grinning blonde. Flashback end. Naruto, I do not know what to say. You have already done so much for me, from listening to my most painful memory, training me in chakra, and now you even decided to spare Phelan and even potentially returned him to me and my kind. Just how can I begin to repay you? Arya asked as she tightly held on to Naruto's hand that was around her waist. Arya, are we not friends? Friends do not owe each other. It is expected to do everything you can for your friend, and that is exactly what I have done. Do not even think about repaying me, or else you will be insulting me. Understood? Naruto said sternly, although the both of them knew that his words had no bite behind them. Arya nodded at his words, although thinking to herself of what she could do for her closest friend. Naruto, you have done far more of what a friend would do for another. So no matter what, I will find a way to repay you, no matter how long it takes. Well, it's time to tell the others of what happened on the plateau. Let's go. Naruto said as he started to stand only for Arya to pull him down abruptly and hug him. Could we stay like this, for just a little while? Arya asked with a red face, fearing that she was asking for too much as only a friend. Alright, just for a little while. Naruto said as he slid back down to the ground with fluttering eyelids as the events of the day started to catch up to him. Thank you, Naruto Vor. Arya whispered as she too slowly closed her eyes as the two slipped away from the land of conscious. Far away from the burning plains and inside a large black castle and down a long hallway sat a man sitting on a golden throne. With gritted teeth and bulging veins on his forehead, Galbatorix thought back to the sense of loss he felt when the bonds between him and his puppet rider and dragon broke apart. Who did this? No, just who could do this? Certainly not the elves, they are far too weak and ignorant of the intricacies of the ancient language. Certainly not this Eragon and Saphira, they are even weaker than the elves. Galbatorix thought back to the last image he saw from Phelan's eyes, which was due to a spell, before the connection between him and Phelan cut off. No, it could only be the mysterious blonde that I saw from that incompetent elf's eyes. From reports, this blonde also showed up in the Battle of Farthen-Dur. This, Naruto. But just how powerful is he? Too many questions, and not enough answers. Whatever, even without the true name of the ancient language, there are none in this land that can match me. Maybe it's time to stop being passive in this war. It's time for the world to feel the wrath and power of the most powerful being in this world. Me, Galbatorix. Galbatorix thought as he imagined torturing the blonde for all he knew and then finally tearing him apart in front of the Varden. Behind him, a black mountain stirred as it felt his master's mental state. Slowly, an eye as tall as a man opened, showing within its depths rage and hatred towards the world. It was time for Galbatorix and Shuriken to show themselves to the world once more. Chapter 28, Oops. Eragon tried to calm the quickly growing impatient leader and commanders of the Varden as they started to wonder where the blonde was. Soon, King Hrothgar joined them as he too walked into the tent to discuss what happened. Finally, in order to keep order, Ajihad sighed and decided to have Eragon tell them as much as could of what happened. Everyone, while we wait for Naruto and Arya to come, let's have Eragon begin to tell us what happened after the new rider appeared. Ajihad said as he nodded to Eragon. Eragon thought for a moment before deciding to keep his friend's powers a secret until the blonde decided to tell them. As Saphira and I destroyed another catapult, we suddenly felt a mental attack that was far stronger than any of the spellcasters of Empire could do. But it was strange, it felt like there were multiple components to the attack rather than just one or two. And they didn't feel like human, or even elven minds even. Eragon said as the others wondered just what could have happened. Looking up, we saw a red dragon that was only slightly smaller than Saphira, and on its back was a black armored rider. As the others gasped in horror, Eragon continued. Although I was already tired from the previous fights, I could still tell that the rider and his dragon were strong, very strong. The best we could do was force a stalemate in the air and force the duel onto the ground. At this point Eragon closed his eyes as he remembered his failure in defeating the rider. To be honest, if I were at full strength and had not consumed most of my energy in the battle, I could have definitely defeated him. But as it were, the both of us were about even in pure swordsmanship. But with the energy toll from before, I was forced backward and eventually defeated. Eragon said as the others looked back at him as they wondered how he could stand in front of them if the situation was that bad. Before I was defeated, I was disarmed. As his sword came towards me, I drew the last of my energy, grabbed his sword, and forced his helmet off of his head. To our shock, it was an elf. An elf had betrayed his own race and the Varden and had become a dragon rider under Galbatorix's command. Eragon waited as the others in the tent burst out in shock and horror, not willing to believe that an elf of all races betrayed them to the Mad King. Then I attempted one last mental attack with Saphira, but was once again by what seemed to be a cacophony of maddened voices. Annoyed at our efforts, the elven rider raised his sword and attempted to stab through my arm and cripple me before bringing us to Galbatorix. Then it happened. Eragon said as he looked away, ashamed to have needed the blonde to endure such pain just to save his arm. What happened, Eragon? It is obvious that the elf failed in his attack as we can see that both of your arms are still attached. Ajihad remarked as he started to connect the dots. The second before the elf struck, Naruto suddenly appeared before me and took the attack through his lung. I think it would be better if Naruto told you what happened afterwards, as it is not my place to tell you. Eragon informed them as everyone just stared at him, unable to connect their mental image of the blonde being stabbed through the lung to the blonde that appeared to be normal when he walked into the tent. Once he finished his part, Eragon drew the Hiratian Kwani that he always kept at his side and threw it on the floor. After a few minutes passed, Eragon just rolled his eyes, realizing that the blonde must have fallen asleep. Ajihad, it's clear Naruto is asleep somewhere. Wait a moment, I'll go get him. Eragon sighed as Ajihad smiled, knowing the interesting personality Naruto had. As Eragon left the tent and climbed on Saphira, Saphira thought to Eragon through their link. Eragon, how should we face Naruto now? Although he saved you from being crippled and even got stabbed through for his troubles, the power he showed was simply terrifying and he was even able to regenerate almost instantly from a mortal wound. Saphira, I don't think anything has changed between us and Naruto. Remember that when he showed his strength to us, he mentioned that he was willing to appear a monster just to protect his precious ones, us. Anyways, we're able to find out about anything from the Red Dragon? Something about it seemed different. Eragon thought back as he directed Saphira towards Arya's tent. All I got from him was that Naruto somehow broke the connection between him and his rider. However, he did say that if things went bad, both of their souls would have been shattered. The last thing he said before refusing to say anything more was that he swore to Naruto in the ancient language to be loyal to you, little one. Saphira thought, completely surprising Eragon with everything she just told him. I see why you are so cautious. The fact that he could break the bond between a rider and his dragon is terrifying. But still, that does not change the reason why he did what he did. And besides, with the connection to his rider broken, there is a chance that he could potentially form a new one with someone else. And with his loyalty towards us, it's a step in the right direction to re-establish the Dragon Rider Order. Eragon comforted Saphira, who grunted her acceptance. Soon enough, the pair stood right outside of Arya's tent. With his sensitive elf-like ears, Eragon heard Naruto's snoring, which he got used to during their stay in Elesmera, but was surprised to also hear another light breathing. Opening the tent, he quickly saw the source of it. Saphira, this may be our chance. Eragon thought excitedly. Chance? What do you mean, little? Oh, I see. Don't worry, Eragon, I have your back. Saphira thought back as she realized what her closest partnet meant when she too saw how entangled the pair of Naruto and Arya were as they peacefully slept. Remember what Master Oromiz told me about Faiths? It starts out as a slate with intense colors which is then molded with magic to depict an extremely accurate picture of what the user sees in his or her mind. I still have a Faith in one of my packs on your back, don't ask why. Eragon said in his mind as Saphira cocked her head to one side, wondering why in the ancient language her rider would have an untouched fairth. Eragon chuckled as he brought the fairth out and concentrated on the scene before him. Usually, it could take hours if not days to develop a fairth, but that was if one was working purely from memory. However, when the subject in question was right in front of his eyes, it took mere minutes for a realistic picture of a couple that spoke volumes of their closeness to appear. When the fairth was complete, Eragon took it and placed in front of the sleeping duo, ran out of the tent, and had Saphira roar out to wake Naruto and Arya up. Arya woke up with a start as a dragon's roar rang out close by. However, as she started to stand up, she realized just how entangled she was with Naruto and vice versa. Heavily blushing, she thanked whatever higher being there was, except Naruto, he didn't count, that he was still asleep. Otherwise she knew that he would be teasing her for the next week about this. As she attempted to gently, albeit somewhat reluctantly, leave her friend's embrace, Naruto's arms immediately tightened around her, preventing her from leaving and further flustering her. Damn it Naruto, why do you have to be so much stronger than the elves? At least nobody is here to see this. Arya thought until her eyes landed on the complete fairth that depicted, what was obviously them, a couple in an embrace that would make Jiraiya proud. Soon enough, Arya immediately poured everything into the task of slipping away from Naruto before finally succeeding in doing so by making use of the great flexibility that the elves were known for. Grabbing the fairth, she lifted it above her head and was about to smash it into the ground when she slowly lowered her arm to look at it one more time. Only one person in this camp knows how to make a fairth other than me, and that is Eragon. He has really improved to be able to capture so many details inside of it. To break it would be an insult to him and be a waste. Yes, that's right, I am just keeping this because I don't want Eragon to feel insulted that I broke it. Arya thought as she stored the fairth away from prying eyes. Feeling the space around her tent, she noticed that both Eragon and Saphira were waiting outside. It would seem that Ajihad and the others want to know what happened at the plateau. Arya pieced together as she went to sit by Naruto's side. Leaning down, she whispered, Naruto, there's free ramen right outside the tent. Almost immediately, the blonde awakened with frantic eyes as he looked for the ramen that was promised to him. When he did not see any and instead only saw Arya with a small case of bed hair, he pouted before pointing towards her. Arya, how could you do this to me? I thought we were best friends. By the way, nice bed hair. Naruto retaliated as Arya ran her hand through her hair to discover that her friend was right. Upon finding out about this, she immediately said a small spell that smoothed and slightly straightened out her hair into the glossy shine with small whirls at the end that he knew so well. Naruto chuckled as watched her actions, finding them rather cute for a supposedly impassive elf. Hearing the blonde's chuckles, Arya slightly glared at him, which elicited more laughter. Knowing that there was nothing she could do, she just pouted and turned her head away while sporting a light blush. Why do I almost always turn red around him? I do care about him, but only as a friend. But when I saw that sword through his chest, I felt like my world ended. Not even the revelation that Phelan was still alive shocked me as much. And then when he called Naruto a monster. Arya shuddered in silent anger as she thought about that moment. Well Arya, I think those two outside have waited long enough for us. Let's go. Naruto said as he stretched a hand out to her. Looking at the hand, Arya nodded and then accepted the help up. However, before she stood, she remembered the question she wanted to ask. Grabbing his hand, Arya held it in place as Naruto turned around in slight confusion. Naruto, what was that power at the plateau? Is that monster fox still trying to cause trouble? I thought you said that he was your friend. Arya asked, worried that her friend was trying to hide his suffering from her. Naruto realized what she was talking about and smiled. No Arya, nothing is wrong. It is true that that power was from the fuzzball inside of me, but instead of forcibly taking the power away from him, he shares it with me if I have dire need for it or when he agrees to give it. Also, don't call him Monster Fox, his name is Kurama and is someone that would trust my very soul with. So don't worry, I'm not trying to hide anything from you. All you need to do is ask. Naruto said as Arya looked into his eyes, searching for any falsehood. Finding none, she nodded and stood up with his help. As she stood up, she thought, perhaps I do see him as more than just a friend. But after seeing how Phelan betrayed me and the elves, I need more time to search my feelings and make sure that whatever I am feeling is for real. Eragon turned around as he heard the tent flap open, but then flinched when he saw the glare that Arya was sending his way. Saphira, I think I made a mistake. Little one, I think you are right. Don't worry, should you die before the end of today, I will make sure that my last act will doing to you as I did to Brahm. Saphira smirked as she imagined the suffering her rider might go through at the hands of an embarrassed elf maiden. Soon, they arrived at the commander's tent. When they entered, the people in the tent quieted as they carefully looked at Naruto and noticed the tears in his clothes that corresponded to the injury that Eragon talked about. Naruto nodded to all of them before saying, Ajihad, King Hrothgar, could we talk in private? The following information is extremely sensitive and must not be allowed out of this tent. As the other commanders of the Varden protested, Ajihad looked at Hrothgar before nodding. Fine, everyone, out of the tent. Now, the leader of the Varden commanded as the others hesitated before ultimately following the order. Once they left, Naruto nodded towards Arya who immediately said, Atra nosu ways vardo fra eld hornya. Once the sounds inside of the tent were sealed, Naruto began. Chapter 29, Discovery. I assume that Eragon told you about me arriving in time to save him from getting crippled. Naruto started, having already noted the pointed eyes towards particular rips in his clothing. When Ajihad and Hrothgar nodded, Naruto started again. Then Eragon has not told you about what happened afterwards on the plateau. After the two nodded again, Naruto said, then for now, all you have to know is that I defeated both the dragon and his rider. As for his identity, Naruto looked at Arya before she nodded, it was Phelan. Silence hung for but a moment in the tent, before Ajihad and Hrothgar whirled their heads at Arya, seeking answers. Is this true, Arya? Was it really Phelan, your fellow egg-carrier companion? Ajihad demanded, wondering how he was alive when Arya reported him as dead. It is true. Phelan is still alive, and is currently on the red dragon outside. Arya answered, having no need to hide anything. Before they could say anything, Naruto continued. How I defeated him is not something you need to know for now. Just know that both Eragon and Arya still trust me despite seeing my power. However, what you should know is that I was able to sever the bond between Phelan and his dragon. However, there was an unintended side effect. All of the oaths in ancient language that bound the two to Galbatorix were also severed. Astonishment appeared on everyone's face, other than Arya since the blonde already told her during their meeting. Before Ajihad could say anything, Hrothgar butted in to ask with furrowed eyebrows. Are you saying that you are able to break oaths made in the ancient language and can even nullify one of the strongest bonds made between two beings, the bond between the dragons and their riders? When Naruto nodded, Hrothgar narrowed his eyes as he thought about the implications of this. As he did, Ajihad regained his senses and turned to address the blonde. Then are you able to do the same for Galbatorix and his dragon, Shuriken? And could you break other oaths made in the ancient language from the leaders and spies that we will capture during this war? Naruto thought about it before answering. Theoretically, it is possible to apply it to other situations. However, if it fails, then the person's soul will be destroyed. Don't underestimate what I just said. Dying is just your soul leaving your mortal body. But if your soul itself is destroyed, then in whatever afterlife you guys believe, you will not be able to go there. Your very existence will be wiped from the world and no amount of energy will be able to piece you back together. The only reason I did this to Phelan and his dragon is because I myself did not think much of the potential consequences. Naruto added, making everyone deadpan at the blonde. I see. Nobody truly deserves having their souls destroyed, except for maybe Galbatorix. Ajihad conceded to Naruto. Moving on, I also made the dragon outside swear loyalty to Eragon in the ancient language. Also, there is the possibility of him choosing another rider. When I broke their bond, a faint outline floated out of Phelan and back into the dragon, while his getaway Ignatia disappeared. Naruto informed as everyone in the room gasped, overjoyed at the possibility of another friendly dragon rider. Just as they were about to ask questions, Naruto said, as for Phelan, when I read his memories, I truly wanted to kill him. I saw a broken elf that was further twisted by Galbatorix's words and torture. I also witnessed the terrible things he did to gain more power. But at the same time, I remembered what Arya here told me, how he was a good man, a trustworthy companion, and somebody that was willing to give his life for his comrades. Naruto looked around the room and saw everyone considering his words, but still condemning the elf, except for Arya who spared a thankful glance at her friend. I think you should allow Phelan to live. Make him swear all you want in the ancient language, but give him a second chance to redeem himself. Now that he is free from Galbatorix, maybe he can be saved. And if he can't, he only has the strength of an ordinary elf is no longer a match for Eragon, Arya, or me. Naruto told the others, especially at Ajihad and Hrothgar, knowing that in the end, it was up to them. I could just spirit Phelan away, but then that could turn Ajihad and Hrothgar hostile to me. While this normally wouldn't be a problem given how powerful I am, it could possibly lead Eragon and Arya to distrusting them and creating a major fracture in the Varden. In the end, this is not my land or my home and most likely I will eventually leave it. Perhaps I might one day return, but should that day ever come, it would be far in the future and after everyone, except the elves, have forgotten me. So the hero Allegezia needs is not some blonde foreigner, but the dragon rider Eragon and his dragon Saphira. Naruto thought as he waited for their answer. After a few moments, Ajihad came to a decision with Hrothgar grumbling about it. After taking in Phelan's circumstances and his contributions to the Varden and all of Allegezia, we agree that he should be given a second chance. In the end, he did not do much damage to the Varden and it was you after all that defeated him. Ajihad decided as Naruto nodded his thanks. Then I will bring him to the elves as I have some questions for them that must be answered. Naruto said as he looked to Arya and Eragon. Gesturing at them to follow him, Naruto walked out of the tent and onto the red dragon's back. With hardly a pause, the tent flap opened again as both Arya and Eragon strode out of the tent and onto Saphira's back, figuring out that Naruto wanted to leave for the elves for whatever business he had with them. As they followed Naruto, who led them towards the collapsed plateau where so much happened, they began to wonder what exactly the blonde wanted to know, until the person in question broke the silence. I may have found the source of Galbatorix's strength. Naruto said. Disbelief colored their faces until Naruto began again. However, we need to meet Oromiz regarding this, because if this is true, then Eragon won't be able to stand against Galbatorix alone. There is also the possibility of him giving this power to other people under his command, which could be devastating to the Varden and the elves if they are caught off guard. Naruto said grimly as the three paled. So how are we getting to Oromiz? From what I know of your Hiration, you need a marker to teleport to your location. Eragon said, still in awe of the concept of teleportation. I do have another way to teleport, but I just haven't needed to use it since everything could be done with the Hiration. Naruto said as the others rolled their eyes thinking, of course he has another method, why wouldn't he? It's actually something you have all seen before, the Kamui. As long as I have a strong mental picture of where I want to go, I can go there. Having been to Oromiz's cabin plenty of times, I have easily memorized the location and its surroundings. Is there anything else your Kamui can do? Because it seems like it can do everything. Eragon asked with another eye roll. Yes actually. And that is a secret. Naruto cheekily said with a victory sign, which made the others deadpan and develop large, pulsing tick marks on their foreheads. Before the others could attempt to kill him, Naruto hurriedly switched his eyes to the Rinna Sharingan and sucked everyone into his Kamui before teleporting to Oromiz's cabin. As Oromi polished his sword, nagling and burnished his armor, he thought to Glade. Have you gotten used to your recovered leg, Glade? A rumbling voice echoed back across the link. Of course Oromiz. You worry too much. Have you tested your body enough? Yes I have. And what was that about worrying too much? Oromiz teased back as the only answer he got was a grunt in annoyance before smiling back. It is good that you have finally started to enjoy life more. After being crippled, the both of us became a mere shell of our former selves, including our personalities. After being healed by Naruto Finiral, we are regaining, what humans would call it, our humanity. Glade thought as Oromiz smiled. Yes, we owe a great debt to Naruto Finiral. Not just in healing us, but also giving our life and purpose back. Oromiz thought when he suddenly saw a black swirl appear in front of him. The dragon rider pair tensed and readied for battle as Oromiz activated the various wards around him and Glade while the golden dragon readied the fire that was ever present in his gut. Soon, they relaxed as they saw who appeared as they saw Naruto swirl into existence. Yo! Naruto greeted casually, unaware about how he just broke through the barriers that prevented anything that resembled space manipulation. Greetings Naruto Finiral. That swirling move did not resemble the Hiration that Eragon Finiral described. Another way of teleportation? And how did the battle go? Is Eragon alright? Did Galbatorix appear? Oromiz greeted back as he started to ask the blonde various questions. Hold on and calm down. I thought you were supposed to be the wisest and most patient of the elves. What happened to that? Naruto teased as Oromiz chuckled, thinking of how different he and Glade had become after being treated. Naruto merely chuckled as he continued. Eragon and Saphira are completely fine, as are Ajihad and Arya. However, something serious happened at the Burning Plains, something unexpected. Another rider appeared. Oromiz widened his eyes, trying to deduce answers from the blonde's words before relaxing as he knew it could not have been Galbatorix. Before going further, let me get the rest out so we can all discuss this, as it pertains to all of us. Naruto said as Oromiz nodded, knowing what he meant from Eragon's words. 2 dragons, 2 elves, and a human that looked like an elf swirled into existence as Naruto let them out of his Kamui dimension. Oromiz and Glade tensed when they saw the foreign dragon until they realized that he was unhostile. And then they saw a familiar-looking elf. As the rest of the group regained their bearings, Naruto started where he left off. As you can see, we did not meet Galbatorix. However, we found that Phelan, former egg carrier companion of Arya, was the new dragon rider under Galbatorix. Before Oromiz or Glade could interrupt, and he could tell from the glare coming from the dragon that they intended to, Naruto raised a palm at them to stall further questions. However, I was able to sever the oaths made in the ancient language between the dragon and Galbatorix, as well as the dragon rider bond they had between them. Until Phelan regains conscience, we won't know if the same applies to him. Oromiz almost choked while Glade snorted a column of smoke in disbelief at the blonde's words. They tried to wrap their heads around one of the fundamental truths that existed in Algesia. That a rider's bond with his dragon was unbreakable and that oaths made in the ancient language were the same, except when certain loopholes could be exploited. But if the same did happen to Phelan, I request that he stay here to recuperate and see if he will stay loyal to Galbatorix, or if he will take this chance to change for the better. Naruto said as Oromiz looked thoughtful, knowing that it was not truly Phelan's fault for falling to Galbatorix. He knew just how persuasive the Mad King could be when he wanted to. After all, he underwent the same torture when he was first captured by the Forsworn. On behalf of the elves, we accept your proposition. Phelan will stay in Elesmera after swearing in the ancient language to never cause harm to a fellow elf and to never leave the confines of the Du Weldenvarden. Should he swear, he will be treated once again as an equal, although he will have to work hard to truly earn the trust he lost. If he does change for the better by the end of a decade, then he will be allowed to continue to stay and live out his life here. But should he ever think of betraying us again, he will be executed and his name forgotten. So shall it be in my name, Oromiz, Dragon Rider of Glade, and last scion of House Thrandurin. Oromiz declared in the ancient language as a pulse seemed to ring out in the clearing. Good, now that that's done, I have something extremely important to say. Naruto sighed as he looked into everyone's eyes, especially Oromiz's and Glade's. I think I found the source of Galbatorix's power. The Eldenari. Chapter 30, Startling Origins. After the Naruto uttered those words, Oromiz and Glade stood up straighter. While they were still silent, their tensed shoulders and gripped fists belied their anger. Eragon, Saphira, and Arya looked between the three, wondering what exactly could have moved the normally kind and serene elf so easily. Noting the others' confusion, Naruto gestured towards the elven dragon rider pair. It would seem that the matter of the Eldenari is a secret one, a knowledge that is not widely spread, if at all. Oromiz, considering how Eragon was defeated through the use of these Eldenari, I think you should tell us all more about them and why Galbatorix has so many. Oromiz looked across the clearing in front of his house, suddenly feeling old as he observed that none in front of him were even alive during the fall of the riders, except for Arya, and even then she was only a child. Slumping his shoulders, Oromiz looked to Eragon with sad eyes. Eragon Finierl, what I am about to tell you is one of the greatest secrets to the riders, and known only to us. The Eldenari, or the heart or hearts, is a gem-like organ that all dragons have. Normally, when a dragon dies, its Eldenari dissolves along with the body. However, a dragon is able to disgorge its Eldenari and place its consciousness, or in it before death. Once it does, the dragon's mind could live on forever in its Eldenari. Oromiz began as he turned to lean on Glade while the listeners glanced at each other before settling their gazes on the elder elf again. But it is what comes after the dragon's death that made Galbatorix seek out the Eldenari so desperately. Should a dragon that disgorged their Eldenari die, the spare energy it had before death would be transferred to its Eldenari. And then, after a period of 5 to 7 years, the amount of energy the dragon is able to store increases to astounding proportions. Any one jewel on the belt of Beloth the Wise cannot come close to storing as much energy as an Eldenari can. When Oromiz temporarily stopped, Eragon started to think of the number of Eldenari that Galbatorix must have after he destroyed the dragon riders. As he did, his confidence in defeating the Mad King decreased more and more until everyone in the clearing could feel it. When Oromiz saw this, he subtly shook his head and sighed. I knew it, Glader. He's still not ready for this. You underestimate him, Oromiz. Did you forget that this is the boy, no, man, that crossed over the entirety of Allegezia, escaped the Empire, found the Varden, came here, and fought in 2 battles of massive proportions? And if that is not enough, remember exactly who his companions are. Glader rumbled back as he twitched his wings towards the 2 people around Eragon. As usual, you are right, old friend. There is still Naruto, and as long he is there, Eragon should have nothing to worry about. From what I have felt, there has never been a rider or dragon as powerful as him, and even then I still don't have an accurate grasp on his power. As the elven dragon rider pair conversed with each other, Saphira attempted to calm her rider. Little one. Saphira thought out, not knowing how to comfort her rider for the first time since their bond. Saphira, these Eldenari, just how are we supposed to defeat Galbatorix if we assume that he has possibly thousands of them to draw energy out of? Although Master Oromiz has not mentioned it yet, we can assume that the older a dragon is, the more energy its Eldenari is eventually able to contain. And Dragon Rider Order had many Elder Dragon Rider pairs. So just how? Eragon thought back as his teeth and hands clenched as he started to tremble from despair and hopelessness. Just as he was about to succumb to despair, a pair of warm and comforting hands landed on each of his shoulders. Turning around, Eragon realized that both Arya and Naruto had moved from their locations to stand next to him and had each laid a hand on him. Eragon, I'm sad that you haven't considered me in the equation. Did you really believe that you and Saphira were truly in this alone? Naruto said, although he could still see doubt and now worry for him appearing in Eragon's eyes. Humph, you are far too young to even begin to worry about me. Do you remember the power I used at the Burning Plains? The blonde asked as Eragon merely nodded, remembering the bubbly red aura that surrounded his friend and the sheer power he showed that rendered the Dragon Rider pair completely helpless despite the help of the Eldenari. That was not even close to my full power. If I wanted to, I could probably sink this continent within a day, even with all of my seals. At this statement, the clearing went quiet, even the birds and wind stopped, as everyone stared at Naruto in shock, unable to even comprehend the very concept of destroying Allegezia, not just the surface, but the entire continent. It was a power beyond their wildest imagination. The very air seemed to become solid as a heavy weight settled on their bodies. Their very muscles and nerves automatically tensed at what could have been perceived as a threat until their minds started to work out that it was a friend and ally that said the words. Slowly, the tension disappeared from the air as the ones in the clearing relaxed their stances. That's right, little one. There's still Naruto and his seemingly limitless power. Even without any words or signs, the wound through his lung just regenerated, as if the energy just had nowhere else to go. Know this, Eragon, you are not alone in this fight. Our own masters are already completely healed, thanks to Naruto, and the Varden and elves will help us when we need them. Saphira thought out as she rubbed her leathery snout on Eragon's forehead. Stop it, Saphira, that tickles. Eragon chuckled as he tried to push her snout away. When he realized that he couldn't, he just gave up and sighed. I understand, Saphira. When I heard how Galbatorix seemed to possess a source of virtually unlimited power, I panicked. I forgot that I had people that will stand by me no matter what and that one of them is actually more powerful than Galbatorix himself. Eragon, although my power may be considered insignificant compared to either Galbatorix's or Naruto's, I will gladly lend you it in the coming fights. Like Naruto said, you are not alone in this fight. To believe so would be an insult to us who consider you and Saphira as friends. Arya said as she tightly gripped the opposite shoulder Naruto was holding. Arya, are you still mad about that faith I made? Because I swear it was only 2. Eragon began until he swore he heard crack from his shoulder. Eragon Finiorol. That is enough. Do not say another word. Arya commanded as she started to channel chakra into the hand that was holding onto Eragon's shoulder until a familiar hand landed on her arm and gently but steadily pulled her squeezing hand off of his shoulder. Arya, that's enough. I think Eragon got your point. Naruto said before putting his other hand under his chin to rub it in a questioning manner. Although I'm wondering what exactly got you so flustered. You're usually so collected, no matter the situation. And what kind of faith did Eragon create to make you even start to use chakra in your hand? Arya hurriedly pulled her hand out of Naruto's and stepped out of his reach. It is merely a misunderstanding between Eragon and I. It does not concern you in any way. Arya said in a seemingly impassive voice, although Naruto could still hear the faint ripples that indicated a lie. Why is she lying? Now I'm really curious on what she is hiding from me. Naruto thought until a deep and familiar voice interrupted his thoughts. Idiot, out of all the times you have been with her, just what has ever flustered her? Kurama barked in his mind as Naruto continued to think. The only times I have ever seen blush was, oh, around me. Naruto finally thought back as Kurama just rolled his eyes, exasperated at his host's somewhat slow thinking outside of battle-related matters. And you say that you have experience in love, loser. Echoed Kurama as he tried to get a rise out of Naruto. Nah, Arya, is the reason because of M. Naruto began as he pointed at himself when suddenly a sword was stuck in the ground between his legs with edge a mere few inches from his little brother. Naruto, did you say something? Arya asked in an uncharacteristic sweet tone as when she started chanting in the ancient language and both of her hands started glowing green. Naruto swiftly shook his head as his weakness towards righteous feminine rage surfaced as Arya's face started overlapping with Sakura's, Tsunade's, and most of all Hinata's. He shuddered on the inside when he recalled how Hinata's usually angelic face could so easily turn into a most horrifying one, when those beautiful yet activated Byakugan eyes locked onto the most vulnerable positions of a man. I'm sorry Arya. I didn't say anything. He quickly said as everyone in the clearing sweat dropped at the pair's antics. Eragon, please do not make fun of Arya, or Naruto. Or else I might consider having Naruto break our link instead of experiencing your suffering at her hands. Saphira said as her wings slightly trembled. Agreed. Even the most powerful of beings must bend the knee to an angry woman. Eragon responded back as he suddenly experienced cold sweats forming on his back. Ah, youth. Oromis thought as he watched the two argue in front of them. Although the pair were both 100 years old, they were still children in Oromis's aged eyes. Interrupting the scene, Oromis walked a few steps towards Naruto and coughed to get his attention. Naruto, I have a feeling that you have something else you wish to question me about. What is it? The two almost immediately stopped as Arya, who realized that what she was doing being seen by other people, blushed from her previously fair cheeks to her tipped ears and turned away from Naruto. As for Naruto, he sheepishly started to rub the back of his head, slightly embarrassed at the interaction which resembled that of an old couple. However, after a couple of moments, Naruto regained his bearings and turned to Oromis to ask, what can you tell me about the Arezak? Eragon twitched at the name as he briefly remembered the faces of his uncle and Brahm who died at the hands of the Arezak. As he did, he tightly clenched his fists as he struggled to keep a calm and impassive face that fooled everyone but Saphira, who sent comforting thoughts to her rider. Oromis merely stared at the blonde, wondering what brought up the question. There is not much known about the Arezak. They were a race that fed on humans and could release a breath that paralyzed human minds. However, the minds of dwarves were hardly clouded while there was no effect on elves. They were nightmares for the humans, for where the humans were weak, the Arezak were strong. Oromis stopped as he waited for Eragon and Naruto to absorb the information. But what made the Arezak deadly was their innate ability to shield their minds from mental powers and detection. In the past 100 years, Galbatorix even used them to scout out rumors of potential dragon riders. Their innate shielding rendered them incredibly effective. But why are you asking about them? I have heard that last Arezak were killed by your very hands. Oromis questioned as looked curiously at Naruto. Naruto tensed as he hesitated for a second before deciding to tell them about his unique interrogation method. Relaxing his shoulders, Naruto started to ask a question that had been on his mind since the Burning Plains. Where did the Arezak come from and why do they seem created? Oromis lifted a white eyebrow as he tried to interpret the question in a variety of ways, especially the last one, before answering. No one knows where exactly the Arazak came from. However, it is speculated that they came with the first humans that migrated to Alagaezia. Due to their cruel tendencies and killing and eating a massive number of humans, the Dragon Riders conducted a massacre against the Arazak, called the Arazak War. When Naruto heard this, he gritted his teeth as this Arazak War seemed eerily similar to the bloodline purge back in the elemental nations. But something did not seem right with this. From what he knew, the Dragon Riders were an order that preached peace and only ever enforced it through violence when it was absolutely necessary. Suspiciously, Naruto asked as he narrowed his eyes. Is that really it? Is that really the only reason the Dragon Riders performed genocide on a race? Couldn't the Arazak have been banished somewhere outside of Alagaezia or possibly bound in the ancient language to never cause troubles again? And you have still not answered why they seem to be manufactured. What are you hiding, Oromiz? As Arya and Eragon thought about the blonde's words, their own eyes narrowed when they realized the unusual and seemingly unnecessarily cruel decision of the esteemed Dragon Riders. Even Eragon, despite his tragic past with the Arazak, could not help but feel a slight amount of pity for the seemingly extinct race, especially after his training with the elves left him with a much greater respect for life. Oromiz exhaled, knowing that everyone, especially Naruto, will not let him go without the real reason behind the war. The next statements uttered by the elder elf changed everyone's knowledge of what they assumed was only another war in the long history of Alagaezia. That is because, Naruto Finiro, the Arazak were indeed created. Chapter 31, Forgotten History. Naruto's arched one of his eyebrows, having already expected the answer, due to having searched the soul of the Arazak. Meanwhile, the others in the clearing did not expect the answer that Oromiz gave, stood in silence, shocked by his answer. Master, what do you mean created? Surely you meant that they were a cross between two species that continued on through their progeny. Eragon asked, unsure of what his master meant by created. Arya merely stayed silent as she waited for Oromiz to clarify his words, and did not have to wait long for him to further explain his vague answer. No, Eragon Finiro, I meant exactly what I said. The Arazak were not naturally created, but rather artificially by implanting the flesh of one of the most powerful races in Alagaezia into human hosts. Silence pervaded the clearing outside of Oromiz's hut as everyone looked at Oromiz with astonished eyes. As a few moments passed, Eragon slowly realized that the Arazak that he hated were merely unfortunate fellow humans. Finally, he could not take it anymore and burst with questions that Arya and Naruto were thinking in their minds. Master, which race's flesh was implanted into these humans? Just what could have given the Arazak such peculiar abilities? But most of all, why were the Arazak created? For every action, there is a reason, and I do not think any of us are seeing the reason. Eragon questioned as he tried to find sense behind this mystery. Naruto shook his head before answering one of Eragon's questions. Eragon, there is only one reason to create an abomination like the Arazak. He clenched his hands into fists as he drew a parallel between them and the Jinchuriki of the elemental nations. 4 weapons of war. Oromiz nodded at the blonde's answer as the others narrowed their eyes, now suspicious of what such monsters were possibly used against. Without another moment, the elder elf answered everyone's questions. The flesh that was implanted into these humans was that of the Grey Folk. When Oromiz saw the looks of disbelief from everyone but Naruto, he nodded. Yes, the very race that bound the use of magic with their language, the ancient language. The history that most know of is that one of the Grey Folk attempted a spell, but instead almost destroyed the entire of Alagaezia. However, the reason why one of the Grey Folk even attempted such a spell was to seal the land where what we know of as the Arazak were created. It was then Naruto interrupted him. Oromiz, not that I'm doubting you, but something does not add up. From my limited experience, the Arazak that I encountered were far too weak compared to a race that could have destroyed Alagaezia. Even the adult versions of the Arazak that I saw in their memories were far too weak to be that much of a threat. And just how did the Dragon Riders find the origins of the Arazak? Naruto Finiro, patience. Oromiz raised a hand in a bid to stem the blonde's questions. The Arazak that the Dragon Riders and you encountered were merely far weaker descendants of the originals that fought against the Grey Folk. The Dragon Rider Order, in our attempt to understand this species and try to come to a peaceful end, performed a spell that almost drained everyone's energy reserves to perform. This spell allowed us to read the memories of not just a captive Arazak, but its entire ancestral history, even to when its ancestor was first created and when it fought against the Grey Folk. Oromiz paused as he closed his eyes, remembering the terrible memories that still plagued him as he saw what seemed like regular humans transform into monstrous beasts and fight other humans and similar-looking beasts, but without the sinister aura which shrouded the transformed. He opened his eyes and continued. The war eventually ended, but only when one of the Grey Folk tried a spell to separate the land, where the Arazak's ancestors were created, from the rest of the world. However, this was before the Grey Folk bound magic with their ancient language, so instead the entirety of Alagaezia was almost ejected from this world. Realizing their mistake, the Grey Folk hurriedly bound their ancient language to magic and managed to halt, but not completely destroy the spell that was ravishing Alagaezia. Instead, a barrier was erected between the two lands, preventing further Arazak reinforcements from reaching our shores. When we found out about this, we immediately decided to perform a cleansing that was disguised as just another war for the humans. A race that was designed to fight against the Grey Folk, yet filled with so much malice, could not be allowed to exist. That is the hidden history of the Arazak that almost nobody but the Dragon Rider Order knew of. But Naruto Finiero, what exactly prompted such a question? Oromiz asked, as he narrowed his eyes, as a slight suspicion that the Dragon Rider pair couldn't help slowly arose in both of their hearts. Naruto clenched his jaws for a moment before loosening them to go through with his earlier decision. First, I hope what I say stays in this clearing. As you said before, the Arazak have innate mental barriers that render them invisible to mental detection, as well as having a secondary effect of being unable to read their memories even when captured. However, the way I read their minds was not through direct mind reading, but rather through reading their very souls. Naruto paused, as he watched the different reactions that went through the others. Souls? What do you mean by reading souls? Oromiz asked, curious about Naruto's method of reading memories. Like I said to Arya and Eragon, the body is a vessel that holds the soul. Should you die, your soul still moves on to whatever afterlife you believe in. But should it be destroyed, your very existence will be wiped from the world and no amount of energy will be able to piece it back together. However, I do not like using this power of mine often, because it is nauseating to have someone's entire life, not just their memories but also their every emotion that they ever had, rush through my mind. Naruto said. I don't think I should mention that I can also rip a person's soul out and incorporate their skills. No matter how close I am to them right now, that is not something I want just anyone to know. Perhaps in the future, but not now. Naruto thought as Kurama added his opinion. Brat, you should know by now how unwise it would be to tell anyone of your full abilities. I know Kurama, but after near a century of being a shinobi and hiding everything from my friends as I smiled at them, I have gotten weary of doing so. The only one that I could tell everything to was my Hinata and now there is no one, but you, that I can tell everything to. Naruto thought sadly as Kurama started grumbling. Enough of this sappy crap. Don't you already have another mate who you can soon tell everything to? Ugh, this is so annoying to listen to. I swear this is more annoying than when you preach about ramen. Whatever, I'm going back to sleep. And with that, Kurama withdrew from his host's mind as he went back to sleep, ignoring Naruto's calls. Damn it Kurama, Arya and I aren't like that. Naruto thought as he scratched his whisker marks in embarrassment at the idea. I see Naruto Finiero. So the souls of the Arazak did not feel like those you have felt before, thus rousing your curiosity. How interesting. Oromiz looked at the slight confusion in Naruto's eyes before clarifying his interest. We elves do not have a religion or any particular belief or a concept of an afterlife, unlike all the other races. This is because there has been no hard proof that could suggest such a thing. But from what you said about souls, you are implying that there is an existence after death and for such a powerful being as you to believe in it is fascinating. Naruto shifted on his feet as he remembered unpleasant memories of a large army of Edo Tensei reanimations tearing through the Shinobi alliance of the Fourth Shinobi War. Back to the war, what are the plans of the elves regarding their invasion into the empire? With the loss of his new rider and dragon, he will start to accelerate whatever plans he has and may even fly out to meet either the Varden or the elves, rather than just wait in his castle at Yurubane. And now we have confirmed that he is using the Eldenari to unnaturally boost his powers. We know that no one but me is able to face him head-on. Naruto concluded as he looked at Oromiz for answers. Oromiz thought for a moment before answering Naruto while crossing his arms. The elves will be marching on to take Sunan, which lies directly to the west of the Du Weldenvarden. And we will not be hiding anything anymore. Gladra and I will be leaving the forest of the Du Weldenvarden for the first time in a century to show the world that the dragon riders are not extinct and that we will no longer tolerate Galbatorix's rule. After the city's fall, we will march south on to Gilead and raise the city where Aryasvit Kona was captured before finally marching on to Yoryubane. Should Galbatorix still be there even after losing most of his empire? Good plan. The men of the empire should not have any training against an elven army, so Sunan should fall within a day. However, Gilead is a major city of the empire and will not be so unguarded, especially after word of the fall of Sunan spreads. If anything, that will be the time when Galbatorix and Shuriken will appear to either halt the elves or to kill you and Gladra. Naruto determined, drawing on his experience as the Hokage of a highly militaristic village, at least for the first few years of his reign. Reaching his right hand over the seals on his left arm, he unsealed another Hiratian Kwani and gave it to Oromiz, who recognized what the strange-looking knife did, thanks to his student Eragon. So instead of showing surprise, the elder elf merely nodded his thanks and in a flash stored the kunai up one of his sleeves. After handing the kunai, Naruto stepped back as he told the others what he thought the Varden would do. The Varden will likely wait at least a week before doing the same as the elves, except from the south. The main city to be captured will be Drasleona, and from what I have seen, it will not be easy for the Varden to do so. Furthermore, it was the nesting place of the Arazak for the past century, so there will likely be strong and nigh impregnable defenses in place. However, there are many smaller cities that will have to be captured, otherwise the Varden will risk being flanked from behind, should they ignore these cities. Eragon, be careful when you fight these battles. Most likely Galbatorix will start sending out more spellcasters for the sole purpose of either capturing or incapacitating you and Saphira. As for the Red Dragon, it's your decision to either lead him to the fight or leave him here in Elesmera and away from the fighting. Arya frowned as she analyzed her friend's words, realizing that it sounded as if he was going to separate from the Varden. Naruto, what about you? From your words to Eragon, it sounds as if you will not be moving with the Varden. And me. Arya said as she thought the last words to herself. Arya, unless Galbatorix flies out himself, you, Eragon, and the 12 elven spellcasters that Queen Islanzati sent out should be enough to handle the battles until Drasleona. As for me, I'm curious about where the Dragon Rider Order was once situated, the city of Doruariba on the island Vrongard that lies west of the shores of the Alagizia. Although I may only know how strong the Eldenari are from those I captured from Phelan, just from their strength, I refuse to believe that such an established organization as the Dragon Rider Order did not leave some help for a future rider, even if it was against Galbatorix. So after transporting you, Eragon, and Saphira back to the Varden, I will be going to Doruariba myself to check if there is anything that will be helpful to Eragon. Before Arya could protest, Naruto raised a hand to stop her before continuing. Don't worry Arya, remember I left a clone that I fortified with extra chakra at the Manoa tree. Although it might not be helpful in a large-scale battle, it will be able to inform me when you are about to march on Drasleona. However, should anything happen, immediately use the Hiratian kunai I gave you and no matter what I am doing, I will be there in a flash. Naruto said as he walked up to Arya and gripped her shoulders with both of his hands while staring into those shining emerald orbs that were fringed with midnight black hair that refused to stay completely straight. Arya stared right back, unable to turn her gaze from those sky-blue eyes that could at any time turn into those exotic ringed purple eyes, gravity-defying blonde hair that was as soft as it looked, and whisker marks that made the strong man in front of her purr just like a contented war-cat. Finally, coughing and snorting filled the clearing as the two dragon riders and their dragons amusedly interrupted the moment that the two friends were having. Coming to their senses, the two leapt from each other, easily clearing several meters in a single movement as they both turned red as they realized what just happened. After a few moments, Arya turned and swiftly walked away with long strides in the direction of her family's home. Coughing, Naruto turned towards Eragon as he tried to ignore the knowing look on the younger dragon rider's face. Eragon, when I flew towards you, I saw that you should have been able to continue dueling Phelan, despite your exhaustion. However, your sword seemed to refuse to move. What happened? Naruto asked as Eragon lost his earlier look, instead frowning at Zarok that was strapped to his waist. You saw right, Naruto. I knew that I could keep fighting, but no matter what I tried, it seemed as if Zarok was resisting me. It felt like it did not fit my hand, no, more like it didn't want me to wield it. This made me remember something Salembum told me, when the time comes and you need a weapon, look under the roots of the Manoa tree. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the unexpected information that the workat provided Eragon. Eragon, when I spoke to the Manoa tree, no Linnea, she also told me that your sword was rejecting you and that you two did not seem to fit. She told me that should you ever go to her for a weapon, she will give it to you, but only if you pass her test. Naruto raised a hand before Eragon could ask the blonde what he meant. She did not tell me what test would be, but be prepared. The test she will provide will probably unlike anything you have ever gone through, Naruto said as Eragon looked toward Saphira and the elder dragon rider, trying to see their opinions. Both Oromiz and Saphira nodded, showing their agreement at Naruto's words. Hardening his gaze, Eragon unstrapped Zarok from his waist before handing the blade to Naruto. Naruto, while Zarok let me down at the burning plains, this sword is still gift to me from Brahm. Take care of it, and let it serve you well until its true owner is found, Eragon announced as he swiftly walked to where the Manoa tree was with Saphira behind him. Looking down at the iridescent red blade in his hands, Naruto swung it a few times before nodding his approval and sealing it in one of the seals on his arms. Oromiz looked at where Naruto sealed the sword of his former student, Morzan, and thought to the more innocent days where all was well and all Morzan had was a slightly too large of a desire for power. Shaking his head, he walked back into his hut, plucked a book from one of his bookshelves, and walked back to Naruto and gave him the book. Naruto Finiro, while I know your powers are beyond anything that has ever existed in my knowledge, there are still hidden dangers at Doruariba that can take down even the strongest should their guards ever be dropped. Naruto nodded at the words, knowing the wisdom behind them. However, he was certain, by instinct, that even if he sustained a mortal wound, or was even pierced through his head, he could still survive, just that the regeneration would take a while longer. Before leaving the clearing, Naruto switched his eyes to the Rinne Sharingan and said to Oromiz and Glaider. Oromiz, Glaider, guard your minds well. I'm about to give you a present that I think you two will appreciate more than anyone else. Naruto waited as he watched the slightly confused pair instantly bring up their mental barriers. A swirl suddenly appeared around his eyes as a small pile of around 30 bowling ball-sized jewels materialized at the pair's feet. Instantly, Oromiz's and Glaider's eyes widened in shock, and then intense joy at the sight of the Eldenari. However, that joy was soon replaced with sorrow and rage as they felt the madness, despair, and hatred that emanated from the Eldenari. Closing their eyes, Oromiz and Glaider bowed their heads as far as they could while standing to Naruto before thanking him individually. Naruto Finiro, on behalf of the elves, the Dragon Rider Order, and all of Allegezia, I thank you for what you have brought back to us. If there were ever a single doubt in my mind regarding you, they have been forever cleared. Should you ever need help, I will even offer up my life until you no longer need it. This, I swear. Oromiz said as he swore in the ancient language. Soon a rumbling sound echoed in Naruto's mind as Glaider connected his mind to Naruto's. Hatchling, no Naruto Namikaze Uzumaki, what you have done for us can never be repaid. As Oromiz swore before, so shall I. Should you ever require help from either or both of us, I shall use my life to make your wishes a reality. However, a piece of advice. Glaider thought as he turned a meter-tall golden eye with a vertical black slit towards the blonde. While you are already doing so, be careful when you are attempting to communicate with weaker beings through your mind. While Saphira and I have spoken to you through your mind, we hid our astonishment and fear, as much as I loathe to admit, of the breadth and strength that emanated from Yurit. Should you ever try to communicate with other spellcasters, elves, and especially humans, suppress your mind as much as you can, otherwise the mere presence of your mind might just break them, physically and mentally. Glaider advised as he turned his head away from Naruto. Naruto stood still, having already suspected what Glaider said, but never being able to confirm his suspicion as the only two he communicated with mentally never told him anything. Finally, he turned to leave and walked a few steps before slightly turning his face towards the pair, showing only enough for the two to see a sky-blue eye. You're welcome, Oromiz and Glaider. But you do not have to place your lives on the line in exchange for what I have done. It was only right that I give back what belonged to your order, to you too. Just, be careful you too. Should you Galbatorix kill you, I don't know how Eragon will turn out. The last thing I want to see is for him to tread the path of revenge that my best friend walked on. So, if I had a wish, it's to live. Live at any cost to see your beloved Elesmera, your hut, the Manoa tree, Eragon and Saphira, and most of all, each other. So don't hesitate to use the kunai I gave you. Even if I didn't say these words, I believe that you too would do so. Now, it's about time I leave, may the stars watch over you both. Naruto said as he smiled a fox smile, then Kamui to where he first landed in Algesia. So it shall be, Naruto Funeral. Oromiz uttered as he turned around with a serious yet happy look on his face and started to strap the instruments of war on himself and Glade. Chapter 32, True Names. In the dark of night, a nearly invisible black swirl appeared at the base of a range of mountains filled with forests. Within a second, Naruto whirled into existence, still clothed in the same white trench coat that was now drenched red with blood with a thin rip on it, where Phelan's sword pierced through him. With a look of disgust, he swiftly unclothed and threw the rest of his blood-stained clothes into a small pile before setting them alight with a small fire jutsu. He didn't particularly care about losing a set of clothes considering he could simply conjure another set with the Banbutsu Sozo no Jutsu. Staring over the endless blue of the sea, Naruto found his thoughts wandering over to his newest companions. I wonder what Eragon and Arya are doing right now. Wondering aloud, he eventually shrugged before summoning several shadow clones to sail the boat and once again entered his Kamui dimension for a nice hot bath. Eragon walked through the now near empty trees shaped into houses with Saphira at his side. Initially, he was curious at the lack of arboreal inhabitants, but remembered that they were marching west on Sunan. As he neared the Manoa tree, he noticed a patch of blonde hair and watched with shocked amusement as a clone of Naruto cheekily winked at him before closing its eyes to continue doing whatever it was doing. Shaking his head after giving Saphira a look, they continued walking through its thick roots. A heavy presence seemed to envelop the two of them. Slightly shivering, Eragon thought of the words of Salembum and Naruto. After looking and mentally scanning the ground beneath the Manoa tree's roots, he finally knelt to one knee and stretched out the hand with the Gedway Ignatia onto the trunk of the tree. Reaching out with his mind and shivering at the alien feel of the tree, Eragon mentally shouted out a plea as Saphira strengthened the signal. Please, listen to me, O great tree. I need your help. The entire land is at war, the elves have left the safety of Du Weldenvarden, and I do not have a sword to fight with. Naruto and the Werkat Salembum told me to look under the Manoa tree when I needed a weapon. Well, that time has come. Please, listen to me, O Mother of the Forest. Help me in my quest. After hearing his mental plea echo slowly disappear without a response, Eragon mustered his strength again to make another plea when a thin root gently wrapped around his hand that was still pressed against the tree. As the two stiffened, ready to fight it out if necessary, the large and alien consciousness of the Manoa tree pressed through whatever mental barriers Eragon had up as if they were not there. I have been waiting for you, young dragon rider and dragon. The Manoa tree whispered in a feminine voice in the duo's mind, but with no less strength than Glade's rumbling. Taken aback by the Manoa tree's response, Eragon quickly asked back in his mind. You were? Just who could have, Naruto? The question died out as he connected the dots. Yes, the one you called Naruto was the first to actually speak with me and informed me of you. I saw how the sword of the traitor would one day let you down and knew that you would one day come to me for the object under my roots. And I will give it to you, but only if you pass my test. Eragon's heart started to beat wildly with joy and excitement as Saphira smiled at her rider's joy, until they both heard the last statement of the Manoa tree. Cautiously, the young dragon rider asked, Thank you, Mother of the Forest, for giving us the chance. But what is this test you speak of? The Manoa tree paused as she finally sighed out her answer. The test is simple, and yet difficult. You and the dragon must discover your true names. The moment you do, I will be able to sense whether you are worthy of me to help you and to see just what kind of person you truly are. Now go, and do not come back until you have succeeded. Eragon and Saphira tried to reach out to the Manoa tree again, but were not able to get a response back from her. When they could not contact the Manoa tree, Eragon looked at Saphira with a hint of helplessness. Just how are we going to find out our true names? From what we know of, finding out true names require extensive experience, knowledge, and most of all luck. We simply do not have the time to wait for our true names to just appear. Eragon thought their mental link. Little one. Do not despair, for we are not alone in this. If we do not know how to proceed, we can just ask our masters for help. Saphira comforted Eragon, who smiled at her while patting her snout. Thank you, Saphira. We will, but ultimately, this test will come down to us. I just hope we are ready to know our true names. As the two left the Manoa tree, the Naruto clone opened his eyes, having eavesdropped on the conversation between the Manoa tree, Eragon, and Saphira. The clone then contemplated out loud on whether his boss had a true name, despite being a foreigner to Allegezia. I wonder if the boss has a true name even though he is not from Allegezia. I guess I'll go ask Arya about it. Clone Naruto thought as he stood up, brushed the dirt from his clothes, and walked over to where he sensed Arya was. Arya was currently at Tyaldary Hall, her family home and where the group first met the Queen and the Elven Lords. Staring at a mirror, the forest green-eyed elf maiden looked at her reflection as she thought back to what happened in the clearing. As she remembered those blue orbs, she quickly turned away from her other self in the mirror. Just why do I seem attracted to Naruto? After finding out how Phelan betrayed me, I should have tried to keep my distance. But instead, I find myself getting closer to him with every moment I spend with him. Is this truly love? If it is, will he also one day betray me like Phelan did? Arya pondered when she Naruto walking towards her from the mirror. Gathering her thoughts with a breath, Arya turned around to face clone Naruto. Is there something you need, Naruto? She asked when the clone waved its hands in front of him. Nah, I'm just the clone boss left to continue purifying the nature energy running through the Manoa tree, remember? The clone said as he suddenly went to circle around her, seemingly analyzing her with his staring eyes. Arya turned constantly, trying to keep the clone in her sight when he suddenly stopped in front of her before giving a nod of approval. She merely raised an eyebrow at it, demanding an answer with her eyes. Eventually, the clone shrugged his shoulders, apparently having come to a decision. You pass, Arya. I approve of any future relationship between you and the boss. The clone declared as he did a nice guy pose that caused a certain pair green spandex wearing men in the pure world to suddenly whip their heads in a particular direction. Soon, the afterlife was filled with the yells of youth. Clearly this particular doppelganger inherited the more childish side of his creator. Stunned for a moment at the clone's words, Arya stood staring in disbelief at him before blushing a furious red. Drawing her sword, she unconsciously channeled green chakra through her blade and swiped it towards the clone. Yelping, he immediately started dodging her sword strikes, only to accumulate several scratches. I'm glad that I'm not a regular shadow clone, otherwise I would have dispersed by now. But still, as expected of the boss, he really is helplessly attracted to strong, beautiful women. The clone thought until several more shallow wounds appeared on him. However, this has gone on long enough. Arya, stop. I just wanted to ask whether it's possible for the boss to have a true name, and if he does, could you help him find it? The clone shouted out as Arya slowly stopped trying to stab another hole for the clone to breathe through. Calm yourself, Arya Drottningu. Although, Naruto did say that the clones were him, just with a few quirks of their own. So if what the clone said is true. Arya thought as she blushed again until she remembered the clone's request. True name. Of course he should have, I see. Arya realized as she considered the clone's question. She furrowed her defined eyebrows as she pondered the question until coming to an answer. In Allegezia, everything has a true name, whether they be living or not. This is true mainly because everything contains a small amount of magic, which we have found out to be chakra, just harnessed in a different way. So, although Naruto is not from Allegezia, he does use chakra and has even learned how to do magic through the ancient language and should thus have a true name. Arya concluded as the clone nodded its head before asking her about the second half of its request. So, will you help me find the boss's true name? As a shadow clone, I am basically him, just that I can think on my own. So even if the boss's true name is different from mine, it shouldn't be too different. And if you do, you'll be the first to know. Arya smiled as she was about to say yes, but froze when she heard what the clone said in the end. Do you know what you are asking for? If anyone knows your true name, they would be able to completely control you and you wouldn't be able to even fight against him. Your enemies could even order you to kill yourself or your loved ones and you would do it, just because they knew your true name. Arya sighed as she saw the look of horror appear on the clone's face. So do you still want to tell me your true name? If Galbatorix, or even just another enemy spellcaster manages to break my mind, they will find out your true name, and there will be nothing you could do. The clone hesitated before a resolute expression on its face as he hoped that he was making the correct decision. Arya, the boss never hides anything from his precious ones, unless the truth could hurt them in some way. And you are the closest to him in the living world, other than that nine-tailed fuzzball inside of him. So yes, I know what I am asking for and I am sure that the boss will agree with me. The clone said with clenched fists at its sides. Is he serious? I did stress the importance of one's true name, but even if he is a clone, it is basically Naruto that still wants me to hear his true name. Arya's heart raced at the trust that her friend had in her. This might also be selfish of me, no it definitely is, but with this, I can truly confirm his character. Arya thought as a look of resolve appeared on her face. I will help you, clone. But first, I want to ask, why are you so interested in finding your true name all of a sudden? She asked as she tilted her head ever so slightly to the side. Well, I sort of listened in on the conversation between the Manoa tree, Eragon, and Saphira, and she gave them a test, to find their true names. So if I'm right, they should at some time come to you for guidance. The clone answered with a sheepish look, rubbing the back of its head. Arya deadpanned at the clone as she walked past it and into Alesmara before gesturing the clone to follow her into the forest. The clone moved to follow, but not before creating another one and dispersing it. That's it for part 4. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.